All right, folks, what's next in Canadian politics? Well, in the last 24 hours, Trump talks are back on the menu, conservative infighting has picked up pace fast, and a Green Party co-leader is out. I'll let you guess which one. I also got a question from some of you guys about floor crossers, so I'm going to do my best to answer that too. First, let's talk about the big news on the Canada-US relations front. Trump just came out and said Prime Minister Mark Carney will visit the White House, quote, within the next week or less. We know that Mark Carney and Trump actually spoke yesterday. The Prime Minister's office put out a readout, which is basically like a brief summary of a call, and that confirmed that Trump congratulated Carney on his election. I guess that's despite the fact that Trump's preferred candidate, which was himself, I guess didn't win. But anyways, the readout tells us that the leaders, quote, agreed on the importance of Canada and the United States working together as independent sovereign nations for their mutual betterment. It also goes on to say that to that end, the leaders agreed to meet in person in the near future. So that's going to be the start of some very consequential conversations for all of us, which is also why I'd argue that it's unlikely, despite the Liberals not quite getting enough votes to form a majority government, that we can expect to be plunged into an election anytime soon. First, and possibly most importantly, because Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet has called for a, quote, partisan truce for as long as Canadian negotiations with the US take. And since the Bloc Québécois still has 22 seats, which is more than enough to help the Liberals survive any confidence votes that could topple the government, you can expect a relatively stable Canadian government during that time. Now, one thing a few of you have been asking me is whether some MPs are likely to cross the floor, meaning switch parties, to give the Liberals a majority, because they're only technically 3 MPs short of that. And while I don't have a crystal ball, I would honestly be kind of surprised if this happened. Maybe I'll eat my words on that one. But my thinking here is that with a minority government, the other parties have power and leverage to push Carney's government on issues they care about. So why would they join his team and lose that leverage unless they have a real genuine change of heart about their own personal beliefs in politics? Sure, Carney could try to entice them with promises of personal power in the form of a cabinet position, but that would be a self-interest choice. And if you're acting for self-interest, that kind of choice is only for your short-term self-interest. Because the actual voters who gave you that position probably also voted for the party that you were associated with. And those same voters usually end up punishing MPs who throw away that choice and cross the floor to another party. So yeah, I do think floor crossings are unlikely, but this is politics, so who knows? Especially when, despite there being a lot of chatter about potential NDP floor crossers, there is a civil war brewing among conservatives. And this has continued to escalate in the last 24 hours. It's basically the more progressive arm of the broader conservative movement versus the more populist, hard-right politics among Poilievre loyalists. Like conservative MP Jamil Javani, who just posted a fake image of Doug Ford on Twitter, the same Doug Ford who criticized the federal conservative campaign, ripping off his Ontario PC shirt to reveal a Liberal t-shirt. Meanwhile, Nova Scotia's progressive conservative Premier Tim Houston suggested today that the federal conservatives need to do some soul searching.
I think there'll be some lessons learned from this campaign. I think the Conservative Party of Canada was very good at pushing people away, not so good at pulling people in, and I think that they probably saw that in some of the results they had across the country. I think the Conservative Party of Canada, well, I hope they do some soul searching on what they believe it means to be a conservative. There are many, many shades of blue.
Meanwhile, Doug Ford hit back at the federal conservatives too, saying that Poilievre's guys didn't bother to help his candidates during their election either.
I shouldn't interfere in the federal election. Last time I checked, Pierre Poilievre never came out in our election. Matter of fact, him or one of his lieutenants told every one of his members, don't you dare go out and help the PCs. Isn't that ironic?
So yeah, things are getting spicy. And it is, once again, moments like these that I realize my interest in the Real Housewives and my interest in Canadian politics is really the same interest in different fonts. Meanwhile, Poilievre, prior to losing his seat Tuesday morning, has promised to stay on as federal Conservative leader. But that's not just up to him. The first thing to point out is, as I said yesterday, he can't be the leader of the official opposition if he doesn't have a seat in the House of Commons. It's in the rules. And Poilievre won't be back in the House of Commons anytime soon, because first, if he wants to get back in, he has to convince one of his MPs to resign so he can take their spot, and then he has to wait for Mark Carney to call a by-election in that riding, and the whole process could take months. And he could also lose and give the Liberals another seat. But will Poilievre even make it to that point? A quick aside here, do you remember that video where he chewed an apple while being really rude to a reporter and it went mega viral? Eric Wickham from Press Progress reached out to that reporter from that video who said that Poilievre's loss brings him, quote, satisfaction. Anyways, as I was saying, will Poilievre even get to the point where he can figure out all that by-election stuff? Because while lots of prominent Conservative voices are lining up behind Poilievre, sources speaking to journalists have been giving us a sense of the lines being drawn in the sand. One veteran Conservative source told the Toronto Star that this election was a, quote, unmitigated disaster for the Conservatives. Quote, we gave the Liberals yet another term. People didn't choose change. Poilievre lost his own seat. It's pathetic. So yeah, despite his pledge to stay on as leader, Poilievre's future isn't certain, especially when you consider that Andrew Scheer and Erin O'Toole both intended to stay on too. And yeah, they all got booted. Speaking of leaders leaving, I should mention that the Green Party also lost one of its co-leaders. Jonathan Pedneau said in a statement this morning that he is stepping down, stating he must, quote, take responsibility for the failure to translate the Green Party vision into, quote, electoral gains. Elizabeth May was in his replies saying that she wishes she could have, quote, succeeded in persuading him to remain. But it sounds like Pedneau is leaving his time as the Green Party leader on the doorstep. And as Elizabeth May saying on election night, sometimes you just have to leave your worries on the doorstep because life can be so sweet on the sunny side of the street.
Life can be so sweet on the sunny side of the street.
That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow with the latest political news. Until then, what do you think of all this?